we'll get started. Welcome to week 10. It's our Publishers Roundtable. And Joanne and I are particularly gratified and proud of this, that we're able to assemble such a distinguished panel. And when we first started to develop this program, this particular course, we really wanted to do something that was different, something that I felt was missing from the class, the production management class that I took as a member of Cohort 1. And that was contact with a publisher and hearing from publishers. So you've already done assignment number 1 where we said, reach out, reach up to someone, learn something from someone, and write about that experience. And now we've assembled a panel of folks from different genres of publishing so they can share their experience with you, and that you can use this as a networking opportunity to learn more about scientific publishing, association publishing, business to business, and I will go through all the genres here. So let me do a short introduction, and then we'll also ask the panelists to give us a little bit more in depth, but I'll put the names and faces together for you. And Ani Mahapatra is the Assistant Director at ACS Publications, represents the scientific, medical, technical, otherwise known as STM, side of the business. Nicole Harris is the publisher and VP of the National Glass Association. She manages the editorial, advertising, production, and marketing for 2 B2B titles called Glass Magazine and Window and Door. Steve Hall is the founder, editor, and publisher of Bethesda Magazine. He's also a founding partner of Arlington Magazine, and I'm anxious to hear about the insights that he has about the city and the regional magazine publishing genre, which is one of the ones that I particularly enjoy. Scott Havens is the president of The Atlantic, and he'll talk about the consumer side of magazine publishing. So welcome you all, and we'll get started.
We also want to introduce Emma Patty, our videographer. And so I think we mentioned this the last time we met, but we're recording this live for the online students, for the distance education students. It's the first time we've ever done this. And we've also asked the online students to send us questions. So 3 different students sent us questions. So when we get to that point at the end where we say, are there any questions, and there's silence, we at least have some questions to ask. But hopefully this will be a very lively conversation, and that it will elicit a lot of questions for you that hopefully you can ask on this panel. We've also, if you can't tell already, we've set this up. Do you remember the first class that we did, and we talked about all the different kinds of magazine publishing, and so this is set up in the order of the way we discussed it the first night. So we've got the STM world covered. Nicole sort of is what's the word I want? You're both, your association publishing and your 2 titles are also business to business publishers, and then we split consumer into the city regional magazine category. And Scott, who has spoken to this class in previous years, when Betsy was here 2 weeks ago, Scott used to do the digital presentation, so he has since been promoted. So now he gets to talk about the broad spectrum of consumer publishing at the Atlantic. So what I thought we would do, this is a production class. I'm going to ask 1 production question, we'll get it out of the way, and then we can talk about a lot of other broader aspects of publishing. So as everybody introduces themselves a little bit more, can you also talk about your relationship with your production team at your organization? So Ani, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Sure. So first, I'd like to thank you again for inviting me. I was on a panel 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed it and the feedback there. And so I work as Margie mentioned, at the American Chemical Society. So Margie was a colleague of mine for about 6 years when I started at the ACS. I also work with Rochelle, so she can keep me honest if I'm out of line.
She can verify it.
You can verify. So I started at the American Chemical Society as assistant managing editor for one of the journals. The American Chemical Society is the largest professional scientific society in the world. We have 155,000 members. They're all chemists. We publish 44 scientific peer-reviewed journals. I started on one particular journal as assistant managing editor, the journal that was fairly new at that time. I was involved in the launch of 3 other journals, and over the course of 6 years now, I'm assistant director of ACS Publications, particularly looking after the biological and medicinal chemistry journals. That's my own background. I have a PhD in biochemistry, so I'm more on that side. So it's been an interesting transition for me from the bench to directly managing one journal to overseeing a portfolio. So to answer your question, my interactions with production, I had more close interactions with production when I was an assistant managing editor. I had almost day-to-day interactions working on the issue, on the actual product. Now I work with, I oversee a group of managing editors who work on various journals and other colleagues in other departments. But I still work with production on, in particular, when we're thinking about new products. We're constantly looking to launch new journals. So production plays a very important part in that aspect. We also work very closely with production in communicating some of the benefits of publishing with the American Chemical Society. In part, we have at the ACS, we have a very nice automated workflow which enables us to get our accepted articles published fairly rapidly. Sometimes when an accepted article gets published or gets accepted, this is a highly technical scientific article, we can actually publish it in final format generally in about a week and get it up online. So getting that message out not only to our editors who I work with, but also to our potential authors is another way. So yes, I do work with production, but not as much as I used to.
Nicole?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate all of you for choosing publishing and production, because you're in for a really fun time. It's challenging times in publishing, but there's so much potential now, and it's really exciting. So, and if somebody told me when I started in this profession 28 years ago in B2B, it was business publishing, trade association publishing, that I'd be talking about glass for 20 years, I'd have said, you're crazy. Because really my goal would have been going to work for one of these guys.
Yeah.
But it's sort of an understated reality here, if you're in this area, that associations, whether they're professional or charitable, or in my case, company owners are the members. It's the unsung and sort of like ugly sister to the big fancy or more recognizable consumer names out there. But you can really craft a terrific profession, and I'm living proof of that. I'm still here. So my relationship with production really is hands off. I have now, biggest staff I had was 28. That was in 2008. I'm down to 7 people. We are doing more stuff now. We're doing digital editions. We're doing apps. We're doing newsletters. We're doing, you name it. We're trying it, and we're imitating the consumer guys. So my production person is a lot more than a production person, and she's a person. But she is a military sergeant. I mean, I don't even get in her way. When she says I got a deadline, trust me, I'm jumping. So, you have a lot of power if you continue to learn all of the new technologies and everything that's going on, because it's not just what you're placing on the page anymore. And, I'm sure we all have, at our age demographic here, we have a lot of stories about, Ruby lists and typesetting and all this old stuff that's still important to know, I guess, or know the history anyway. But in terms of the new technology, if you stay up on that, you can go a lot of different places. Steve?
First of all, thank you for including me in your demographic. That was very generous of you. I appreciate that. I have been in the magazine publishing business for longer than many of you have been alive, 30 years. Okay, a little more than 30 years. And before I started Bethesda magazine, I spent 14 years as an executive at what is now Atlantic Media, Last 8 years, I was the senior vice president there. Had a great job, was getting well paid, and so approaching age 50 with 4 kids to put through college, I did a really smart thing. I left this great job and started a magazine. My wife and I did out of the basement of our house. For the first 3 years we worked there, there was 3 people on our staff. We now have an office in Bethesda with 23 people. And we publish Bethesda Magazine, which covers Montgomery County. We publish Arlington Magazine, and we have a terrific website and new digital edition. One thing Joanne didn't mention is that Emma, our videographer, is also Bethesda Magazine, Arlington Magazine web manager, and does our video edition, which launched yesterday, or our digital edition. I have a particularly close relationship with advertising production in that I'm married to our advertising production person, so I have great insight and also know enough to stay away largely from what she's doing. She does it so well. Production has changed so much in the 30 years that I've been in business. Emma is very involved in production because she does our digital edition. We don't have a editorial production person per se. We have a 3-person art department, and they handle all of the production responsibilities. Work very closely with Emma, work very closely with my wife on advertising production. And you know, if somebody who had been a traditional magazine publisher 25 years ago went away from the business or fell asleep and woke up today, they wouldn't recognize. And I think it's also much more interesting now than it used to be.